Hello and welcome to this new episode. Today we're going to navigate through the main key pillars that are shaping the Africa's economic outlook for 2024. By examining the continent's growth prospects and to delve into the global trends and regional dynamics, we will try to paint a comprehensive picture to see what's lying ahead for the upcoming year.
Africa is experiencing slowed economic growth due to increasing global uncertainty. Internal and external disruptions such as political instability, low export demand, the slowdown of the Chinese economy, and stricter monetary policies are weighing on the situation. Despite these challenges, the African economy remains resilient, with projected growth at 3.8% in 2024, according to the African Development Bank. Economic growth varies across regions, influenced by national policies and external factors. For the year ahead, Central Africa is experiencing slower growth, while East Africa is enjoying sustained growth due to regional integration and investments in infrastructure. North Africa maintains stability in its economic performance, while Southern Africa's growth is low but on the rise. West Africa shows promise in its growth trajectory. Overall, Africa has the potential to overcome challenges and achieve inclusive and sustainable economic growth. By investing in strategic policies and enhancing regional collaboration, Africa can build a prosperous future for all.
Today, I am joined by Dr. Ottaviano Canuto, who is Senior Fellow at the Policy Center for the New South and former Vice President at the World Bank. Dr. Canuto, thank you and welcome in this episode.
It's a pleasure to be here again, Ahmed.
Given your expertise in the field of economics and international development, I would like you to give us an insight about the macroeconomic trends that are shaping the continent.
Okay, good. See, last year was not an easy one. If you think of the growth rate that so far we have estimated for Sub-Saharan Africa in 2023, it was the second year in which that growth rate was lower than before. And it may have finished the year probably with a growth rate around 2.9%, which is low relative to what the region needs in order to climb up the income ladder. This year is expected to be much better. The growth rate expected, forecast, for instance, by the World Bank for the region is of 3.8%, going up a bit in next year to 4.1%, and which is a bit better than what the IMF forecast at the end of last year. But it's still, in terms of per capita income, it's still not a big thing. In 2024, we're going to have an increase probably of the per capita income 1.2%, because the growth rate of the population is higher than in other areas of the world, and 1.5% in 2025. But the fact of the matter is that the macroeconomic imbalance have improved a bit. It doesn't mean that that the region, the Sub-Saharan Africa, is out of the woods. But at least one may say that inflation has come down. It's still high, but it's moved down. And we have watched a very gradual, sustainable footing of the public finances in many countries in the region. Little by little, still way to go.
So somehow you are optimistic about the future growth prospects for the continent?
Yes, moderately optimistic in the sense that this year and next year will not be as bad as last year was, but with a series of risks that we can discuss here.
But what do you think about the primary drivers of economic growth or stagnation across the continent or regions in the...
They will remain quite different between the resource-intensive countries of the region and the non-resource intensive. That depend more on agriculture. In the case of the resource-intensive countries, and I have in mind here countries like Namibia, Botswana, DRC, Liberia, Sierra Leone, Zambia, the risk for those countries will stem, for instance, of the growth slowdown of China, which matters a lot for commodity prices and given the dependence on minerals exports or oil exports by part of sub-Saharan Africa. The growth slowdown in China tends to affect negatively them. The great unknown as of now in the global economy, one of the great unknowns is what is the economic growth of China that tends to be the settlement after the turbulence that we are watching now. And that has a strong impact on the resource-intensive countries. Whereas, of course, the non-resource-intensive ones, particularly those dependent on agriculture, it will all depend on the evolution not only of the price of food, but also on the absence of shocks to the global economy. The issue, as we know, in the last few years, we have watched so many different types of shocks. I'm not talking about only about the pandemic, but also including the invasion of Ukraine by Russia, and hopefully not potential implications from the war in Gaza. And this tends to create, let's say, risk lifting evaluation. So investors then pull down from purchasing assets and receiving bonds issued by these countries, and this affects all of them. So it also an important dimension of the global economy that will have implications is the evolution of interest rates in the advanced economies. Because every time there is a hike in interest rates in the US or in Europe, that affects the minimum interest rates that are charged on bond issuance by sub-Saharan African countries. Besides the risk premium, you have the basic risk. Well, apparently we may have seen the peak of those interest rates in the US. Apparently they have gone as up as they would. Now the direction will be probably in the second half of the year, lowering of those interest rates. But the fact of the matter is that we have to look at them, at basic interest rates, and also on how the risk premium evolve. And an interesting thing, and we can discuss this more, is the fact that some sub-Saharan African countries have been trying to come back to the bond markets. We had this month an issuance of a bond, a $1.5 billion bond by Kenya, but paying a yield of 10%, which is a high one, but not as high as those yields have been in the previous years, right? And also Kenya, this bond issuance will serve Kenya to prepay a bond that is coming due in June with a value of $2 billion. But it was a good news in the sense that even though there have been concerns with the debt sustainability of Kenya and so on, Kenya has shown to be able to avoid that for the time being. And our discussion is whether this is good or not. But if you think, in 2023, no bond issuance took place in sub-Saharan Africa. It was 21 months with no bond issuance, no sale of any African bonds, which was the first year like this since 2008. So really, last year was, let's say, the peak of tightness for external financing in markets for sub-Saharan African countries. In January, Ivory Coast, it's worth also mentioning, issued $2.6 billion in bonds at a rate of 8.5%, that is to say lower than the 10% by Kenya. And also Benin also issued $750 million. So the issue of debt remains relevant for many countries in the region. I remember saying the IMF classifying 4/5 of the sub-Saharan African countries in a situation of either high risk or some debt distress, which is a lot, and some of them have not escaped. We have seen the defaults in Zambia, Ghana, Ethiopia, but the fact of the matter is that some of them are trying to avoid having to go to the bankruptcy, to the default. And yes, this is quite important. Of the 17 countries that have outstanding foreign currency bonds, 12 face double-digit yields, 10% or above, which is, you managed to do it, but that the underlying arithmetic is not very much favorable. The hope is that little by little they manage to improve their risk prospects and avoid the default. To be seen. And in many African countries, let's say, the expenditure on interest rate payments today is larger than the expenditure on education and health, which opens the question on maybe in some of these cases, instead of procrastinating until it becomes inevitable, as to some extent it happened in the case of Zambia, Ghana, and Ethiopia, some of them should be more proactive in calling for a debt restructuring because the underlying condition, even if avoiding a default, it may prolong for a long time a situation such as this, in which the expenditure on interest rates, on interest payments, is larger than the expenditure on education and health. So the debt situation remains, let's say, one
of the biggest challenges.
That's right. Right.
That really reduce the prospects for growth for many countries. And this comes to my last question: what are the opportunities for and potential risks to invest in the businesses needs to consider when evaluating Africa's economic prospects for the year ahead?
Right. Definitely, one besides the agriculture, and it's incredible how many countries in sub-Saharan African country could have followed the model of Brazil in that regard. Brazil is a stupendous case of success in agriculture due to a combination of use of science, generation of new seeds adapted to the soil conditions, together with the use of equipment and use of science in forecasting the appropriate moment for cropping, for harvesting, and so on. The agriculture intensive countries in the region should do more in that direction, so as to lift their productivity and therefore growth. In the case of the resource intensive countries, to be ready for a future, hopefully, in which we don't have so much need of oil, of fossil fuels, but on the other hand, a world in which the need for minerals and metals will go to the roof. And depending on how good is local governance, how well is the use of those natural attributes, that might open a great opportunity for growth for many countries in the region. It's a double-edged sword in the sense that if you don't do it well, then it becomes a curse. But if you do it well, then it becomes a blessing, as it has been the case. And we have in the region examples of countries where the natural resource richness has been a blessing or a curse.
So this means that the soar of or the increase of the demand for critical minerals could offer some opportunities for many countries that are that have some minerals that are very critical for the green transition. This can offer some opportunities for economic growth,
right,
if they are seized correctly.
Yes. You said it right, Ahmed. It all hinges on how well the country uses the incomes propitiated by that richness. If they are to, in the case of blessing, I can quote a case of a blessed use of a natural resource has been Botswana, where the rents accrued by the exploitation of natural resource, in their case diamonds, has been to a large extent used to boost education levels, health, infrastructure, and other assets, because the secret for a natural resource wealth to become really a truly development force is by diversifying the wealth of the country. If the country uses well the richness in natural resource to build up other assets and move on beyond natural wealth, then it's a blessing. But when it gets trapped, when it gets in the loop of simply exploitation, and then the resources are either misused or are sent abroad, and they do not transform into asset accumulation of the population in general, then you have you have a curse.
Right.
And it depends on the countries. It's something. One lesson that we have learned after so many decades is that it's not a matter of multilateral institutions or big groupings of countries. Ultimately, it all depends on what the country, however small it is, a sovereign country, manage their wealth.
All right. I still have one question about the reshaping of the global financial agriculture. Do you think that there's an opportunity for African countries to seize some or capture some investment for the development prospects?
Yes,
so far?
Yes. See, including the green economy, including the climate transition, that will let's say. Sub-Saharan Africa offers an opportunity to develop not only renewable source of energy, and therefore contribute by using those renewable source of energy to the rest of the world, but also issues like food security and the dependence, as I said, on critical minerals and so on. This could become a lever for Sub-Saharan Africa to raise the profile of its contribution to the global economy.
Absolutely. Dr. Taviano, thank you very much for these insights. I was really pleased and honored to host you for this episode. Thank you, dear audience, for following us, and see you in another episode. Thank you very much, Dr. Taviano.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here.
You're welcome.